For as long as I can remember, I have suffered from hypnagogic hallucinations. But this time around, things feel different. The other hallucinations I have experienced were fleeting and few and far between. This feels more real, and the medications aren't making it stop this time. For the last few weeks, I have been visited by a man in black clothes who sits at the foot of my bed and talks to me. I can't see his face, as it is a complete blur, except for 2 dark spots where his eyes should be. But I hear his voice. It is emotionless, almost robotic. My eyes water just remembering the sound of his voice. The man tells me he is an angel. He won't say why he continues to visit me every night, but he does threaten me. He tells me that he'll do bad things to my family and I if I speak about his existence. He tells me that he'll massacre us, and I can feel him touching my feet. His hands are cold and lifeless. Nothing I say or do can make him leave. He comes and goes as he chooses. I don't always remember everything he tells me. From what I do remember, he enjoys threatening me, toying with me even. He once curiously asked me how my family would react if they walked into my bedroom and discovered that I had been skinned alive. Other times, we just look at each other, often for hours on end. I'm scared of what might happen if I blink. It feels distant, like a dream, as I sit here in broad daylight recounting this. But I know how things change when I turn off the lights and lie down. I can hear my heart slamming in my chest as I wait, gripped with panic. My bedroom door opens, and I am immediately paralyzed, trapped in what feels like a lifeless body as my eyes attempt to focus on his outline in the doorway. My heartbeat is thudding in my throat at this point. The feeling is suffocating. He walks over to me slowly. The bed creaks under his weight when he sits down, all the while examining me closely. There is silence for a long time. Cold, absolute silence. Eventually he speaks. Sometimes he says a lot. Sometimes he doesn't say much at all. But his eyes never leave mine. Last week is fresh in my memory. He sat at the edge of my bed, and the 2 black holes burrowed into my eyes. He again reminded me that I was not to tell anyone about his existence. He continued to explain how he would find me wherever I go, that it didn't matter where I slept. I still can't utter a sound at this point. He goes on to tell me that it would cause him great displeasure if he was forced to massacre my family. This is something he reminded me of often. There is no anger or disdain in his threats. No emotion in his voice. I broke down in tears at this point. He pierced me with those black holes for eyes. "Are you afraid?" he said in that monotonous drone. It was a question, but it didn't sound like a question. There was no upward inflection to the end of his words that makes statements sound like questions. "Why are you doing this to me?" I finally managed to gasp. And for the first time ever, I saw him display some emotion. Or rather, I felt it. He would have been contemptuously smiling if his face had features. It felt cruel. "Have you asked God why?" Again, a question that didn't sound like a question. No high-rising terminal at the end of his words. That was a week ago. I didn't ask him what he meant, because I couldn't. And as I sit here right now recounting this, I still have no sweet clue what he meant. The only consolation was the hope that finally defying his orders and sharing this with others in some capacity may change the course of things. I did tell some people, close friends and family. Of course, I didn't tell them that I think he's real. Over the course of a week, a few of them reported they themselves had started having trouble falling asleep. But beyond that, telling them didn't change things. Not really for me, anyways. He didn't visit me for a little while, but that didn't help me get to sleep any easier. If anything, the anticipation may have made things worse. Every creak in the house sent shockwaves up my spine. My breath got caught in my throat every time the vents made a sound. Last night, as I lay awake, clutching the bedsheets near my face with white knuckles, he visited me again. He sat at the end of my bed, and he stared. Except last night, he didn't say anything. He didn't say a word all night. We locked eyes for what felt like hours, and his cold, dead hands scratched the soles of my feet. I felt paralyzed, completely and utterly powerless. If he did in fact know that I had talked about him to others, he didn't say. But somehow, the silence was worse. He left without saying a word, and I broke down again. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm feeling helpless at this point. I could try to go see a doctor, but how is that going to help beyond them regurgitating the same drivel about my hallucinations and making me take Klonopin till I puke? The man who calls himself an angel did tell me it didn't matter where I slept, that he would find me wherever I was. But I think that's my only recourse at this point. I need to get out of this house. I feel sick in the head,